Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning into this episode of Woolpert's Audiocast series. My name is Matt Hutchinson. I'm a solutions scientist at Woolpert, and joining me today is Chad Collins.
Hi, Matt. Great to see you.
So thank you, Chad. Chad is a cloud solutions architect at Woolpert with a long background in various aspects of cloud engineering, software engineering, and most recently worked at a firm specialized in artificial intelligence and machine learning. So thank you, Chad. It's great to have you here today. I really wanted to sit down with you and discuss the role of machine learning and increasingly deep learning in a geospatial company such as ours and our industry, and why this is important, not just to Woolpert's future, but to the future of the wider community. So thank you.
Oh, thanks for having me. Yep, you really bring up a very broad topic, and machine learning and AI is, you can see that it's evolving every single day. So in one aspect, I feel like I've learned a lot in my recent couple of years, and on the other aspect, I feel like I'm learning something new every day. So it's a very big topic, and I've got a couple bullets to share with you that I've learned over the past couple of years. But I will just kind of tell you, Matt, that I read a book once called HCI, and it was Human Computer Interaction about 20 years ago. And I was pretty impressed that that book had sort of predicted the evolution of machine learning and AI and a lot of what we have in the internet. And, now about 2, 3, 4 years ago, with all the providers like Google and Microsoft and others really starting to bring the platforms to developers, I realized that the time was right to really dig in and start to leverage what machines can do.
Yes, and I think you've hit the nail on the head there with regards to human and computer interaction, and we can touch on that some more here in a little bit. But when I hear that phrase, it reminds me of the fact that at Woolpert we're approaching our use of machine learning in very much a human analyst augmentation approach. So we understand that machine learning is not, a silver bullet. It's not the answer to everything, but it does help augment our analysts to free them up to do higher level tasks that humans are better suited to and work in a more efficient way. So it's very much
Definitely.
not a human replacement scenario. It's very much an augmentation situation.
I couldn't agree more. Definitely. And a lot of times I'll use an analogy of like the technologies allow us to, before if you were tasked, hey, go find a needle in the haystack, to use an analogy. Now we have machines with machine vision or, machine learning where we really can in real time dig into that haystack and find the needle in real time and over and over and over. So that's, there's a number of analogies to try to help understand the power of where machine learning and AI are headed. Something I kind of learned the other day, which I'm always relearning, is that artificial intelligence, a lot of that is having to do with smart agents, chat machines like Google Home and others. But then the subset of that is machine learning, which really where you do the ETLs and the training of the data, and cleansing and preparing the data to train your models and then leverage them. There is a lot of importance with CI/CD, or what they call machine learning operations. So that's sometimes I make the mistake of calling it a little bit boring, but it's not boring. It's just required. It's not as exciting as, hey, we're going to roll out machine learning and it's going to do all these things in AI, but you have to also, set up properly because Matt, I mean, as you know, you can develop great things in the lab, but to get them operationalized and in production, that's a whole nother, set of tasks and skills. Google puts out a nice white paper that sort of shows the life cycle of MLOps. And, historically, at Woolpert, we've have customers with lots of data and lots of plans, use cases, different types of models they want to build across the org. And you'll find out that you need to do an assessment to really understand their capabilities because, frankly, there's so many systems involved. And you need to really have data governance in place and do a number of things to be ready to really leverage machine learning and AI.
Yeah, it's useful for folks listening here and in the broader community to be aware of that. what you're discussing in terms of that, I guess, sort of a tail, the long tail of not just developing, but maintaining these models. And all too often, when on the geospatial side, you see a demo, it often will show you the end result. They draw the box, they detect the object, perform the segmentation, whatever it's doing. And the emphasis is very much on that final output, as it should be for decision makers, but it's easy to forget or not be aware of the whole life cycle that you just described, where although you see it run once in the demo, it's the days and weeks and months after that where it has to be maintained, evaluated for consistency in an ongoing way, potentially retrained with new data, and also if you wanted to use it in new regions, again, more training is required. So I think that's really important. People know that, Chad, when they're signing up to get involved with machine learning, and also when they consider whether or not they need professional assistance in the form of consulting work, be it from Woolpert or others, to help them cross that bridge.
Well, I mean, what a great point you made there. And so some of the terms that are burgeoning are like explainable AI. And so, and again, I'm sort of repeating stories that I hear from other folks, but for instance, at YouTube, I was told by one of the engineers over there that they had sort of set up the models with the goals that they wanted to have happen, but they certainly couldn't understand all the complex algorithm. I mean, the complex, like why it was making the decisions for recommendations. It got so complex, and so they kind of give it a goals, but it's like they couldn't really explain all of it, right? Because it's very complex with what their platform's capable of doing. And so now there's this growth in explainable AI, where you can sort of understand, what is the model doing? Why did it predict that way? Why did it have that result? And moreover, it's important to also have quality assurance teams watching and keeping an eye on what's in production to make sure that the intelligence is doing what you would hope it would do.
The explainability that you've mentioned is so important. And if you think about the typical customers and new customers that Woolpert engages with, one could think of many situations where the ultimate output of a model could be used in some kind of legal adjudication, analysis of land rights,
Right.
evidence, increases in or decreases in taxation, many and varied. And again, in a federal space as well, especially in defense and intelligence, obviously explainability and the decisions that policymakers have to make are intrinsically tied together. So that's a great point.
Yeah, and I Matt, I sort of cheated here, and I googled explainable AI, and of course Wikipedia. It says something like, artificial intelligence in which the results of the solution can be understood by humans, right? Where in contrast, the concept of the black box model, where machine learning historically, it's been hard for the designers of it to know how it arrived at some of its decisions. And when you kind of talk to some of the colleagues that we're working with, data is the most important thing, and you really got to be careful how you tune and prepare the data, because the results may seem like what you wanted to have happen, but you've got to know why it arrived at that result. In some cases it's a little tougher depending on the implementation. But Matt, I was going to say that my background in content management systems over the years, I can remember before CMSs. I remember when people would host their databases inside their intranet and then cache it all out to pages and put it up on the web, and that's how you updated the website. Then CMSs came along, which are really data management systems. And there's just been an explosion of all those technologies where you can really manage data in the cloud. And so when I think about what's going on with machine learning, model management, I think about Google's Vertex, which is they just released it. It's got so much capability. And then on par, Matt, I was kind of telling you about Dataiku and Alteryx. I have more experience with Dataiku historically, and they've built what looks like to me a content management system, but for models and for working with data. And I think that where they drive is democratization of AI and machine learning. And I think that's so important, because we don't want to go in the back room and talk to all the data scientists and we have no idea what they're doing. We want project managers and business analysts and customers. We want everyone to be able to be involved in the life cycle of these technologies.
Agreed with that for sure. And we have to keep sight of the fact that at the end of the day, it is a tool in our toolbox, and we are looking to create a solution. Whatever that solution is going to be used in a process by a person to get an answer, make a decision. So as you mentioned, on the Woolpert side, be it the project directors or project managers, absolutely need to know what's going on in terms of at least the input and output and the implications of what's going on, and certainly the customer knowing that we can meet their expectations and solve the questions they're looking to solve. And from an explainability point of view, I can see why it is such a hot topic, especially when deep learning with these deep neural networks, as you know, the millions upon millions in some cases of parameters, and very little insight into why and how those occur when the model was created. So I'm glad to hear that there's a body of research going into that as well.
Yeah, there's so much happening. And I mean, personally, I just got to tell you, on LinkedIn, I started following data scientists, and then they would like on someone else's comments. And over the past couple of years, there's things I see in my feed where they're modern digital miracles. There's things happening in healthcare. That are, like you said, augmenting the capability of humans. And that's really where we're at. Kind of switching context again, back to the CMS example. Sometimes you just want to build the muscle in your team. You may have built one or two teams with data scientists in your company, but the problem with today is that there's not a problem, but there's so many options on all the clouds, right? And so how do you summarize and know for sure that you're on the best path? And so, kind of to what your point with the assessments, often we'll do a pretty in-depth blueprint analysis and an assessment of what the lay of the land with the customer. And I think that thoughtful approach really just kind of validates thinking, calls out areas where we need to strengthen. Do you need a data lake? Why do you have two? There's going to be IT type of things and data type of things you have to do when you decide you want to do certain use cases and build certain models for production. To kind of take a point there, for me, to get customers quick wins, if they're in e-commerce or they do any type of billing or they sell products, often we can do pretty quickly an e-commerce approach to prediction and just take data from the past 6 months and predict revenue for the next 6 months based on the e-commerce platform or your billing systems and things like that. So I think a lot of times it's about finding the quick wins where we can get from A to B and operationalized in production. There's hundreds of use cases that can be leveraged and growing, right?
Yeah, and with Woolpert as a trusted advisor, I think all too often with new technology like this, again, like you said, it's broad, it's complex. To help clients along is to be that trusted advisor and help demystify the technology and filter out the good details from the noise. And
Exactly.
Woolpert has certainly done that in the past. We're well known for many other geospatial technologies, often on the collection side, be it LiDAR, bathymetry, and processing and algorithm development of those and other platforms. So it's a natural journey and evolution, I suppose, for Woolpert as we're moving into applying machine learning, not just to aerial imagery, but also our emphasis on satellite imagery, space-based data. I'm very excited about the deluge of data, as they call it, that's coming our way. The relationships that Woolpert is building with space-based data providers, and the evaluating that we're going to be providing to that.
Oh, that's so cool to hear. I'm new to the company, new to Woolpert, and I'm coming up to speed on the map side of things and data and geospatial. But I was really interested when sort of talking to you the other day. We sort of honed in on Google Earth Engine, and I took some notes here. But I think that was just such an interesting topic. I don't know a lot about it. Could you share a little bit about Google Earth Engine?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Google Earth Engine, or GEE, has certainly captured my imagination, and I think the imaginations of a lot of other technical geospatial staff and the community at large there. And it's very accessible. So you don't have to be an expert by any means. Folks can get in there and start writing their own scripts. But essentially, Google have done a great job of intersecting cloud computation, being able to do massive computation in parallel with geographic data, so raster-based data, for example, imagery, satellite imagery or certain types of other raster data. And they've done a great job of putting a interactive code development environment, web-based, JavaScript-based, and allowing people to use a vast array of publicly available data in raster format from many well-known sources. The most obvious are Sentinel, Landsat, but many other raster-based data sets too, in terms of terrain and many others, and be able to manipulate that data easily with a well thought out set of libraries or functions that are built in there that can be accessed via JavaScript. It's very reminiscent of Google Maps in some ways, in that it's intuitive. I love it. You get instant gratification. You write some scripts, you hit save, you hit run, and you get to see the output in a map panel at the bottom. And the best part is that as you're executing your code, it is taking those instructions and running them behind the scenes, sort of behind the curtain, in parallel, without the user having to worry about any of those details. It's incredibly fast. I work with, for example, data on a county scale, and many of the processing executions take, a minute or less on a county-wide of data. And in some cases, there's quite complex calculations that are going on, and it's really fantastic. So I'm excited that they've done that, excited that Woolpert is embracing that, along with also our other subsidiaries, Southern Mapping, company there in Africa, and most recently AAM down in Australia. We are very keen to be using Google Earth Engine more, and I'm just excited about that and what it has in store for us.
Wow, it's so cool. I mean, what's neat about Google is that when I say I'm new to maps, I mean, I've used it over the years, and I've been working with our really smart folks at Woolpert. Right when I go to Google Earth Engine's developer page here, clearly, it does have JavaScript and Node support. So, my developer hat is on. They also now have Python, and there's like a REST API.
Yes.
So it's clearly just exactly what you would want as a developer. And you're right, they've abstracted all of the things. I remember the projects of old, right? When you were going to do new technologies, you'd also have to worry about infrastructure and your data centers. And it was just a double project or a lot of work. But this is neat. You've got data sets, compute from Google, you've got their APIs and even apps that you can leverage. This is amazing.
Yeah, it is. And it is a shift, even for those of us sort of old timers that are more used to remote sensing on local workstations, never having enough storage or enough memory and having to shuttle around huge amounts of satellite imagery on disks or slow networks or whatnot. It's really a paradigm shift where the data is stored in the cloud. You're operating where the data lives. So unless you want to, there's no reason to download data locally to your workstation anymore. And increasingly, we are seeing these fantastic workflows where satellite imagery companies, for example, Planet, formerly Planet Labs, have a great collection of APIs or application programming interfaces that allow customers to not just task satellites or order imagery that's collected daily, but arrange delivery in a programmatic way such that the imagery can go direct into a customer's cloud bucket, and in some cases can actually be loaded directly into Google Earth Engine itself, which is just fantastic. It takes a lot of the messing around, the intermediate steps out of the equation, and means that your imagery is ordered and just put in there and ready to work on, which means people can just get down to the brass tacks of doing their science, solving their problem, or what have you. And a lot of it can be automated, which is fantastic as well.
Oh, neat. Yeah, I was really interested to hear more about Planet. When we were talking the other day, I looked them up, and I found that machine learning meets space article they have. It's a couple years old, but it's interesting. The bullets here, there's more data than ever before. That's an important piece for machine learning, right? You need it. Multi-sensor geospatial data, being able to leverage quick changes and make iterations, cloud-based workflows. This is really great. I'm interested to learn more. Yeah.
So you've touched on some really interesting connections there, because there is a logical thread there between the automation that we just touched on and the volume of data that's coming in. And because of these small sats, or when I say small sats, these are satellites that are the size of a large loaf of bread in some cases, right?
Okay.
And when you've got hundreds of these loaves of bread whizzing around space, collecting, in Planet's case, almost the entire Earth's landmass every day.
Wow.
There is so much data. Yeah, it's staggering. The amount of data, plus all the other companies that are collecting data as well, or will be in the future, between the volume that's coming, the reason is it's the temporal nature. We're collecting data every day, multiple times a day, plus on top of the enhanced temporal resolution, you've got the increasing spectral resolution or spectral diversity, where these satellites are collecting more and more bands on every iteration of these satellites. So in Planet's case, as one example, their PlanetScope doves started with 3 bands. Then they moved to 4, then 5, and now 8-band imagery is coming, plus other commercial providers that collect in near infrared and beyond, in shortwave infrared and whatnot. There's a large amount of synthetic aperture radar, or SAR, satellites already online, and more coming. Hyperspectral satellites and thermal. So there is just no shortage of data coming, and with that much data, you have to be able to automate the tasking, the ordering and download, and then the exploitation. So having the APIs, being able to move the data around within the cloud without having to download it, and then feed it into the environment that you're exploiting it in, these are all critical components for taking full advantage of the new satellite systems that we're seeing.
It's amazing. Fascinating. So how would I leverage planet.com? Do we utilize their platform via their website, or are they on Google Cloud Marketplace? How could I learn more?
So our relationship with Planet is a strong one, and I'm glad to say that Woolpert is now a global reseller and value add partner for Planet. And so if people are interested in using Planet imagery, they're more than welcome to speak with our team here at Woolpert, myself included. And I think at the end of the audiocast, we're going to give some contact information. I think cloudsuccess@woolpert.com. Folks can feel free to reach out, but essentially planet.com is a gateway to what they call their Planet Explorer, which is a web-based portal. That's certainly one way that people can sign up for an account, and then depending on what they need and what they want to use, they can purchase a subscription depending on the amount of data that they need, when they need it, the spectral diversity, and all the other things that we talked about, and we can facilitate that. So one mechanism for accessing that data visually through the web is Planet Explorer. There's also the APIs that I mentioned earlier that will allow folks to connect, download, order data programmatically. So there's a few different ways to get in there, and then they also offer geospatial web services as well, OGC compliant web services to consume raster data into the GIS of your choice as well. So there's a few options.
Fantastic. Matt, every time I talk to you, I learn something new, and this has definitely been an excellent run through. I'll have lots more questions for you soon, I'm sure.
Great. I'm enjoying this and would love to do it again. So I guess, Chad, that is it for this episode. Thank you so much for joining me for a chat. And thank you to anyone that has tuned in. We appreciate it. Always happy to hear from you as well. We love feedback. So whether you're considering a solution like the one we just discussed in terms of remote sensing in the cloud, MLOps, and managing that long tail of implementing machine learning in your organization, or any of the other topics we've discussed, we hope this conversation has resonated with you. I mentioned the email address before in terms of how folks can get in touch with us. It's cloudsuccess, that's one word, cloudsuccess@woolpert.com. And please feel free to contact us there. You can also hit up the Woolpert website, www.woolpert.com. And we look forward to hearing from you soon. Thanks again, Chad. See you next time, mate.
Thanks. I'll see you, Matt.
Bye-bye.